Jacob Hendricks wiped the grease from his hands with a worn cloth, the metallic tang of alien lubricant still lingering in his nostrils. Outpost Meridian hummed quietly around him, its vast docking bays echoing with the distant thrum of life support systems. For 3 years, he had been the sole human engineer on this remote station, servicing the elegant vessels of a dozen different species as they passed through this sector of space. The work suited him. Complex, challenging, and blissfully solitary. While other humans sought glory in the colonies or adventure in the exploration fleets, Jacob found his purpose in the intricate dance of circuits and plasma conduits that kept these magnificent ships flying. He had taught himself 17 different engineering protocols, memorized the quirks of Altarian fusion cores, and the temperamental nature of Centauri navigation arrays. The proximity alarm chimed softly, drawing his attention to the main display. Jacob frowned as he read the incoming signature, a Virellan Royal Fleet formation, transmitting emergency codes. This was unusual. The proud Virellans rarely requested assistance, especially not from a modest repair station staffed by humans. Outpost, Meridian, this is Royal Cruiser Starweaver, came a crisp feminine voice through the comm system. The translator rendered the musical tones of the Virellan language into precise, slightly accented English. We require immediate docking and emergency repair services. Jacob activated his response channel. Acknowledged, Starweaver. Bay 7 is prepared for your arrival. What's the nature of your emergency? A pause. Quantum drive failures across multiple vessels. Our engineering teams are addressing the situation. The way she said it suggested they weren't succeeding. Jacob watched through the observation windows as 3 sleek Virellan ships gracefully maneuvered into the docking bay. Their hulls gleamed like polished obsidian, decorated with intricate silver patterns that seemed to shift in the station's lighting. Beautiful vessels, though he knew their occupants would likely view him as little more than a useful tool. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss, and Jacob's first glimpse of Princess Kari nearly stopped his breath. She stood nearly as tall as he did, her pale blue skin luminous under the bay lights. Crimson hair cascaded in waves over her shoulders, contrasting sharply with the deep purple of her form-fitting uniform. Her features were elegantly angular, with large violet eyes that currently held an expression of barely contained frustration. Behind her came a small entourage, other Virellans in similar uniforms, their bearing marking them as nobility or high-ranking officers. They moved with the fluid grace common to their species, but Jacob could see tension in their posture. You are the engineer. Princess Kari's gaze swept over him dismissively, taking in his work clothes and oil-stained hands. Her tone suggested she found the situation distasteful. Jacob Hendricks, Your Highness. He offered a respectful nod, having learned the proper protocols during his years of service. I understand you're experiencing drive problems. Indeed. My chief engineer assures me the fault lies in a cascade failure of the quantum matrix stabilizers. She gestured to a tall male Virellan who stepped forward importantly. Engineer Valdris has identified the issue, but your facilities lack the proper replacement components. Jacob glanced at the diagnostic readout streaming from the Starweaver's systems. The data painted a different picture entirely. With respect, Your Highness, I'm seeing harmonic resonance in the plasma injection system. That would cascade through your quantum matrices, yes. But it's not the root cause. Engineer Valdris stiffened. Human, you clearly don't understand the sophistication of our drive systems. Perhaps not, Jacob replied evenly, still studying the data. But I've worked on similar Altarian drives, and they use comparable quantum architecture. If I'm reading this correctly, you have a microfracture in your primary plasma conduit, probably hairline, maybe a millimeter displacement. Your sensors might not detect it, but it would cause exactly this resonance pattern. Princess Kari's eyes narrowed. Engineer Valdris has checked the conduits thoroughly. I'm sure he has. But this type of fracture is nearly impossible to see without dismantling the housing. Jacob looked up from his display. It would take about 4 hours to verify, if you're willing to let me examine the system directly. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Jacob could see the internal struggle playing across the princess's face, pride warring with pragmatism. Her engineers had failed to solve the problem, and her fleet was stranded until someone did. 4 hours, she said finally. But you will. Work under Engineer Valdris's supervision. Of course, Your Highness. As Jacob gathered his tools, he caught Princess Kari watching him with something between skepticism and curiosity. He had a feeling these next few hours would be more challenging than any engineering problem he'd ever faced. The real test, however, would be proving that sometimes the most unlikely person held the key to solving the impossible. Jacob's hands moved with practiced precision through the Starweaver's engine compartment, his portable scanner humming as it analyzed the quantum matrix housing. Engineer Valdris hovered nearby, alternating between skeptical observation and obvious irritation at being proven wrong. There, Jacob said, pointing to a section of the primary conduit. Microfracture, just as I suspected. See this resonance signature? Princess Kari leaned closer, her presence making the cramped space feel even more confined. Jacob caught a hint of something floral, some kind of Virelan perfume that seemed to complement her natural scent. Show me. He guided her hand to the scanner display, trying to ignore the electric sensation when their fingers briefly touched. Her pale blue skin was surprisingly warm. This harmonic spike indicates structural weakness. The fracture's only about 0.7 millimeters, but at quantum speeds it's like a canyon. Fascinating, she murmured, and for the first time her tone held genuine interest rather than mere tolerance. How long have you studied our technology? Self-taught, mostly, long nights and curiosity. Jacob began disconnecting the damaged section. Your people build beautiful ships, but sometimes the station's emergency klaxons suddenly blared, cutting him off. Red warning lights bathed the engine room as Jacob's comm unit crackled to life. All personnel, this is station control. We have incoming hostile vessels. Multiple pirate ships approaching fast. All diplomatic vessels prepare for immediate departure. Princess Kari's expression hardened instantly. How long for repairs? At least 2 more hours for a proper fix, Jacob replied, his mind racing. But I can jury-rig something to get you minimal drive power in maybe 30 minutes. Do it. She activated her own communicator, speaking rapidly in the musical Virelan language. Jacob caught enough words to understand she was ordering her fleet to defensive positions. The station shuddered violently, throwing them both against the bulkhead. Jacob instinctively reached out to steady Princess Kari, his arm wrapping around her waist. For a moment, they were pressed together, her violet eyes wide with surprise at both the impact and his protective gesture. Primary power coupling is damaged, he said, releasing her reluctantly. The pirates must have hit our main reactor. Another impact, stronger this time. The lights flickered and died, leaving them in the eerie blue glow of emergency illumination. Jacob's scanner went dark. Without main power, I can't complete the repairs, he said grimly. We're trapped. Princess Kari was silent for a moment, then moved closer in the dim light. Then we'll have to reach the backup power junction manually. Where is it? Section C, about 200 meters through the maintenance tunnels. But Your Highness, it's dangerous without proper lighting, and if the pirates board the station, then we'd better move quickly. Her voice held steel now, all trace of royal hauteur replaced by practical determination. Lead the way, Jacob. The maintenance tunnels were cramped and dark, forcing them to move in single file with only Jacob's emergency torch for guidance. Behind them, the sounds of battle echoed through the station, energy weapons fire and the groaning of stressed metal. Stay close, Jacob whispered, acutely aware of Princess Kari following just inches behind him. Her breathing was steady, controlled, but he could sense her tension. They reached a junction where the tunnel split 3 ways. Jacob paused, consulting his mental map of the station's layout. This way, he said, turning left. Are you certain? Princess Kari asked. That passage looks narrower. It's the quickest route to... Jacob's words were cut off by the sound of heavy footsteps echoing from the tunnel they'd just left. Gruff voices speaking in what sounded like Korthian battle cant. Pirates, Princess Kari whispered, her hand instinctively moving to where a weapon would normally hang. Jacob killed his torch, plunging them into absolute darkness. In the confined space, he could feel the warmth of her body against his back, could hear her carefully controlled breathing. The footsteps were getting closer. Without thinking, he reached back and found her hand, squeezing gently in reassurance. To his surprise, she squeezed back, her fingers intertwining with his. They waited in tense silence as the pirates passed their junction, apparently following the main tunnel. Only when the sounds faded did Jacob risk turning his light back on. That was too close, Princess Kari said softly, but she didn't immediately release his hand. We should keep moving, Jacob replied, though part of him was reluctant to break the moment of connection. The backup power junction was a maze of conduits and control panels tucked behind an access hatch barely large enough for one person. Jacob squeezed inside with Princess Kari pressed close behind him, her breath warm against his neck as she watched him work. "Hand me that plasma coupling," he said, pointing to a component just out of reach. As she stretched to retrieve it, her body pressed against his, and Jacob felt his concentration waver. She seemed to realize their position too because she went very still. "Jacob," she said quietly, "earlier, when you corrected Engineer Valdris, why weren't you afraid?" "Afraid of what?" "Of contradicting your betters. Most humans in your position would have deferred to authority." Jacob continued working, hyper-aware of her closeness. "Maybe because I've learned that competence doesn't always correlate with rank, and maybe because some things are more important than knowing your place." "Like what?" He turned slightly and found her face inches from his, her violet eyes searching his expression. "Like doing what's right. Like not letting pride get in the way of solutions." "Is that what you think I do? Let pride interfere?" The question hung between them, charged with more than professional tension. "I think you're more than your title suggests, Your Highness. Just like I'm more than mine." For a moment, Jacob thought she might say something more, but then his repairs sparked to life and the lights flickered back on. The spell was broken, but something had definitely shifted between them. "There," he said, backing out of the access panel. "That should give us enough power." Princess Kari followed him out, smoothing her uniform. "Excellent work, Jacob. Perhaps we should return to complete your repairs." As they made their way back through the tunnels, Jacob noticed she stayed closer than strictly necessary, and, when she spoke his name, the formal distance had melted into something warmer. Whatever walls existed between their worlds, they were beginning to crack. The Starweaver's engine room felt different when they returned, more intimate somehow despite the technical chaos surrounding them. Jacob worked with renewed urgency, knowing that every minute brought fresh danger, while Princess Kari proved herself a surprisingly capable assistant. "Hand me the quantum stabilizer," Jacob said, not looking up from the conduit housing. She passed him the component with practiced ease. Over the past hour, she had learned to anticipate his needs, their cooperation becoming fluid and natural. "You know, I've never seen engineering work done quite like this." "Like what?" Jacob asked, carefully aligning the replacement section. "With such intuition. Our engineers follow strict protocols, measured approaches. You seem to feel your way through problems." Jacob glanced up at her, noting how the blue emergency lighting played across her features, making her pale skin seem to glow. "Sometimes the manuals don't cover everything. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts." "Is that what you did when you diagnosed our problem? Trusted your instincts?" "Among other things." He began sealing the connections, his movements sure and steady. "I also listened. Really listened to what your ship was trying to tell me." Princess Kari moved closer, watching his hands work. "And what was it saying?" "That it was hurting. That something deep inside was broken, but it was trying so hard to keep functioning that the damage was spreading." Jacob paused, meeting her eyes. Sometimes the strongest facades hide the deepest wounds. She held his gaze for a long moment, and Jacob had the distinct impression they were no longer talking about starship engines. "You seem to understand that better than most," Before he could respond, the station shuddered again, more violently than before. This time, the impact sent Princess Kari stumbling forward just as a heavy tool fell from the overhead rack. Jacob lunged forward, catching both her and the falling wrench before either could cause damage. They ended up pressed together against the bulkhead, his arms wrapped protectively around her, her hands flat against his chest. The wrench clattered harmlessly to the deck beside them. "Are you hurt?" Jacob asked, his voice rougher than he intended. Princess Kari looked up at him, her violet eyes wide. "No, thank you." Neither of them moved. Jacob became acutely aware of how perfectly she fit in his arms, how her crisp uniform couldn't hide the feminine curves beneath, how her lips were slightly parted as if she might say something important. "Your Highness," he began, but she silenced him by placing a finger against his lips. "Kari," she said softly. "My name is Kari." "Kari," he repeated, and the sound of her name on his lips seemed to affect her as much as it did him. The lights flickered ominously, reminding them both of their precarious situation. Reluctantly, Jacob released her, though his hands lingered on her arms for a moment longer than necessary. "We should finish the repairs," he said, his voice unsteady. "Yes," she agreed, but made no move to step away. "Jacob?" "Yes. When this is over, when my fleet departs." She seemed to struggle with the words. "Will you remember this? Will you remember me?" The question hit him harder than he expected. How could I forget? She smiled then, the first genuinely warm expression he'd seen from her, and it transformed her entire face. "Good. Because I think I will have trouble forgetting you as well." They worked in companionable silence after that, but the air between them hummed with new tension. When their hands accidentally touched passing tools, neither pulled away immediately. When she leaned over his shoulder to examine his work, she stayed closer than duty required. The repairs were nearly complete when the station's artificial gravity fluctuated, causing Kari to lose her balance. Jacob caught her again, but this time her momentum carried them both down onto the narrow maintenance platform. She landed on top of him, her red hair creating a curtain around their faces. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but didn't move to get up. "I'm not," Jacob replied honestly. Her breath hitched slightly. "Jacob." "I know this is impossible," he said, reaching up to brush a strand of crimson hair from her face. "I know you're royalty, and I'm just an engineer. I know your people probably have laws about this sort of thing." "We do," she confirmed, her voice barely audible, "but I also know that in the past few hours I've seen who you really are beneath the title. And I hope you've seen who I am too." "I have," she said, lowering her head until their foreheads touched. "And it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because I've spent my entire life believing that station and breeding determined worth, that humans were useful but lesser. But you've shown me skill, bravery, integrity, things that have nothing to do with birthright." Her voice broke slightly. "You've shown me kindness I never expected to find." Jacob's hand cupped her cheek, his thumb stroking across her pale blue skin. "Maybe worth has nothing to do with what we're born to, and everything to do with what we choose to become." She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. "My people would say I'm being foolish. What do you say?" When she opened her eyes again, they burned with newfound resolve. "I say that for the first time in my life, I'm making a choice based on what I want, not what's expected of me." She kissed him then, soft and tentative at first, then with growing passion as he responded. Her lips were warmer than he'd expected, and she tasted faintly of something sweet and exotic. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "The repairs," Jacob said weakly, "can wait 5 more minutes." Kari finished, pulling him back down for another kiss. Outside, the battle raged on, but in their small bubble of shared warmth and newfound connection, Jacob and Kari discovered that some barriers were meant to be broken. The Starweaver's quantum drives hummed back to life with a satisfying resonance that told Jacob his repairs had succeeded. the royal fleet would be able to depart once the pirate threat was neutralized. But instead of relief, he felt a growing sense of impending loss. Kari stood beside him at the diagnostic console, no longer maintaining the careful distance that royal protocol demanded. Her shoulder brushed against his as she read the display, and neither of them moved away. "Perfect harmonic alignment," she said, wonder in her voice. "I've never seen our drives run this smoothly. Sometimes fixing something properly makes it better than it was before," Jacob replied, acutely aware of the double meaning. The comm system crackled to life. "Princess Kari, this is Fleet Commander Thyros. The pirate vessels are retreating. We are prepared to depart on your order." Kari hesitated, her hand hovering over the comm switch. "Acknowledged, Commander. We will depart within the hour." After she closed the channel, silence stretched between them. An hour. That's all the time they had left. "I should return to my quarters," Kari said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. "Prepare for departure." "Of course," Jacob agreed, making no move to leave the engine room. Neither of them moved. The space around them seemed charged with unspoken words and unfulfilled possibilities. "Jacob," Kari said softly, turning to face him fully. "What happens now?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Your life, your duties, they're out there among the stars. Mine is here, fixing ships and living in solitude." "It doesn't have to be," she said, stepping closer. "You could come with us. Your skills, your knowledge, you could have a position in the Royal Engineering Corps." Jacob felt his heart race at the possibility, but shook his head. "As what? You're kept human? Someone you visit when duty allows?" "That's not what I meant," Kari said, her violet eyes flashing. "I meant as someone important to me, someone I care about." "Care about?" Jacob moved closer, drawn by her magnetism despite his reservations. "Is that what this is? Caring?" "You know it's more than that," she whispered, her hand reaching up to touch his face. "Don't make me say words that will only make leaving harder." "Maybe it should be harder," Jacob said, covering her hand with his. "Maybe some things are worth making difficult choices for." She studied his face for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. "Show me," she said quietly. "Show you what?" "Show me what I'd be leaving behind. Show me what we could be if we weren't bound by duty and protocol and the expectations of two different worlds." Jacob's breath caught. "Kari." "1 hour," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "Give me 1 hour to understand what I'm walking away from." Without waiting for his response, she activated the engine, room's privacy lock, sealing them away from the outside world. The gesture was both practical and symbolic. For this brief time, they existed in a space between their worlds, free from the constraints that would soon separate them. Jacob reached for her slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. When she didn't pull away, his hands found her waist, drawing her against him. This time their kiss was hungry, desperate, filled with the knowledge that they were stealing moments from fate itself. Kari's hands fisted in his work shirt, pulling him closer as if she could somehow anchor him to her through sheer will. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I've never felt like this before," she confessed, her forehead resting against his. "This wild, reckless feeling. It's terrifying and wonderful and completely inappropriate for someone of my station." "Forget your station," Jacob said, his hands tangling in her crimson hair. "For the next hour, you're not Princess Kari. You're just Kari, a beautiful woman who makes me feel like I could conquer galaxies." She laughed softly, the sound like music in the enclosed space. "And you're not the station engineer. You're Jacob, the man who sees through facades and fixes broken things with impossible skill." Their second kiss was deeper, more urgent. Kari's uniform jacket fell away under Jacob's careful ministrations, revealing the form-fitting undergarment beneath. Her pale blue skin seemed to glow in the soft engine room lighting, and Jacob traced the elegant lines of her collarbone with reverent fingers. "You're beautiful," he murmured against her throat, feeling her pulse quicken under his lips. "So are you," she replied, her hands exploring the muscles of his shoulders and chest. I never imagined a human could make me feel. What? He asked, looking up at her. Complete, she finished, her voice barely a whisper. They moved together with increasing urgency, every touch a promise, every caress a memory being burned into their souls. Jacob had been with women before, but never like this. Never with the desperate knowledge that these moments were all they would ever have. Kari was responsive and passionate, her regal composure melting away to reveal a woman who gave herself completely to the experience. Her soft gasps and whispered endearments in the Virion language drove Jacob to heights of sensation he'd never experienced. When they finally came together, it was with an intensity that seemed to stop time itself. In that perfect moment, there were no barriers of species or status, no protocols or expectations. Just two souls finding completion in each other. Afterward, they lay entwined on the narrow maintenance platform, Kari's head on Jacob's chest. Her red hair spilled across his skin like liquid fire. He stroked her hair gently, memorizing the silk texture, the way it caught the light. I have to go, she said eventually, though she made no move to leave his arms. I know. My people, my responsibilities. I know. She lifted her head to look at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I wish things were different. Jacob cupped, her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away the tears that had finally spilled over. So do I. But this, what we just shared, it was real. Whatever happens next can't change that. She kissed him one last time, soft and lingering, a goodbye that held all the love they couldn't speak aloud. Then she pulled away, gathering her clothes and her composure with the practiced ease of royalty. At the door she paused, looking back at him one final time. I'll remember, she said simply. So will I, Jacob replied, and watched the most extraordinary woman he'd ever known walk out of his life forever. 3 months passed in a blur of routine maintenance and forced normalcy. Jacob threw himself into his work with desperate intensity, accepting every repair job, learning new systems, anything to keep his mind occupied. But late at night, when the station was quiet and the stars looked particularly bright, he found himself thinking of violet eyes and crimson hair, of warm blue skin and a laugh like silver bells. He was deep in the guts of a Centauri trader's navigation array when the proximity alarms chimed. Jacob's heart skipped a beat when he saw the familiar configuration on his displays, a single Virilan Royal cruiser broadcasting diplomatic codes, but not the Starweaver. This was the Celestial Dawn, and its request was unprecedented: permission to dock for extended repairs and personal business. Jacob's hands shook as he guided the elegant ship into Bay 7, the same bay where he'd first met Kari. When the airlock cycled open, he half expected to see her graceful form emerging, but instead, an elderly Virellan male in ornate robes stepped through. Engineer Hendricks? The alien's voice carried the weight of authority and age. I am High, Chancellor Valderan, advisor to the Royal House of Virella. I bring a message from Princess Kari. Jacob's throat went dry. Is she well? That depends entirely on your response to her request. The Chancellor studied Jacob with keen golden eyes. She has asked me to present you with an offer of employment within the Royal Engineering Corps, with full diplomatic status and personal quarters adjacent to the royal family's private section. The implications hit Jacob like a physical blow. She can't be serious. The scandal, alone, would be considerable, Chancellor Valderan agreed, which is why she has also sent this. He handed Jacob a small crystal, the kind used for personal recordings among the Virellan nobility. Jacob accepted it with trembling fingers. Play it when you are alone, the Chancellor advised. Her Highness was most specific about that. Alone. In his quarters, Jacob activated the crystal. Kari's image materialized before him, wearing a simple white dress that somehow made her look more beautiful than all her royal finery combined. My dearest Jacob, her recorded voice said, and he could hear the emotion she was trying to suppress. If you are seeing this, then Chancellor Valderan has found you. I pray he has, because I have something important to tell you. These past months have been the longest of my life. I tried to return to my duties, to accept the marriage proposals from suitable nobles, to be the princess my people expect. But I cannot. Every day, every decision, every moment of my life is measured against the memory of you. I have shocked my family, scandalized the court, and probably damaged diplomatic relations with 3 neighboring systems by refusing every suitor and declaring my intention to remain unmarried. They think I've lost my mind, and perhaps I have. Perhaps love is a form of madness. But if it is, I choose madness over a lifetime of pretending to be satisfied with less than what I found with you. Jacob's vision blurred as he watched her take a shaky breath before continuing. I know what I'm asking is impossible. I know you have a life, responsibilities, perhaps even someone special by now. She paused as if the thought pained her. But I had to try. I had to know if what we shared meant to you what it meant to me. The position I'm offering is real. You would be the chief technical advisor to the royal fleet with your own staff, your own projects, full citizenship in the Virilan Confederacy. But more than that, you would be with me. Not as a secret or a scandal, but as my chosen partner, recognized and respected. I cannot promise it will be easy. There will be those who question your fitness, your origins, your right to stand beside me. But I believe that what matters is not where we come from, but what we choose to become together. If your answer is no, I will understand. I will treasure our time together and wish you all the happiness in the universe. But if there is even the smallest part of you that wonders what if, then please come to me. The celestial dawn will wait for 3 days. If you choose to board, you choose a life beyond anything either of us imagined. If you choose to stay, then I will know I was blessed to love you even briefly. Whatever you decide, know that you have changed me forever. You showed me that worth has nothing to do with birth and everything to do with character. You proved that love can transcend any barrier if it's strong enough. I love you, Jacob Hendricks. I love your brilliant mind, your gentle hands, your brave heart. I love the way you see solutions where others see only problems. I love the man who valued truth over deference, who protected me without thought for his own safety, who gave me 1 perfect hour of absolute honesty. Come to me, my love. Let us build something beautiful together among the stars. The recording ended, leaving Jacob staring at empty space. 3 days. She was giving him 3 days to decide between the safe, predictable life he'd built and the impossible dream of loving a princess among the stars. He found Chancellor Valderan waiting in the observation lounge, gazing out at his ship with patient dignity. Well? The old Virilan asked without turning around. The legal implications, alone, Jacob began, have been thoroughly researched. The Confederacy recognizes partnerships based on mutual declaration and public ceremony. Species is irrelevant under our law. And the political ramifications will be significant. Chancellor Valderan finally turned to face him. But Princess, Kari has made it clear that she will choose abdication over abandoning this course. The Royal Council has decided that a scandal is preferable to losing their heir entirely. Jacob felt the weight of that revelation. She was willing to give up everything for him. She loves you quite desperately, you know, the Chancellor observed. In all my years of service to the royal family, I have never seen such transformation in a person. The melancholy princess who returned from this station has become a woman of fierce determination. She fights for you with a passion that has surprised everyone, including herself. I'm just an engineer, Jacob said weakly. No, Chancellor Valderan corrected gently. You are the man who earned the love of a princess not through conquest or manipulation, but through simple decency and competence. You are the man she chose when she could have had anyone in the galaxy. Jacob looked out at the stars, at the infinite possibilities scattered across the darkness. Somewhere out there, Kari was waiting for his answer. If I say yes, he said slowly, there's no going back. for either of us. Love rarely offers safe choices, the Chancellor replied. But it does offer choices worth making. Jacob thought of violet eyes and warm blue skin, of passionate kisses and whispered promises. He thought of the woman who had looked past his station to see his heart, who had chosen him over duty, over expectation, over everything she'd been raised to value. "I'll need to pack," he said finally. Chancellor Valderin smiled, the expression transforming his austere features. "I was hoping you'd say that. The princess will be relieved." Relieved? She was prepared to wait considerably longer than 3 days if necessary. Love, she informed me, is worth any amount of patience. 2 hours later, Jacob stood in the airlock with a single bag containing everything that mattered from his old life. As the celestial dawn prepared for departure, he took one last look at Outpost Meridian, at the safe, solitary existence he was leaving behind. The ship's quantum drives engaged with a familiar hum, and Jacob smiled, recognizing the harmonic signature of his own repair work. Some things he thought were meant to be fixed properly so they could carry precious cargo safely home. As they jumped to hyperspace, Jacob Hendricks, soon to be Lord Jacob of the royal household, whispered a promise to the stars. He would spend the rest of his life proving worthy of the love that had chosen him across the impossible divide between worlds. In the vast tapestry of space, two hearts had found each other against all odds, proving that love truly could transcend any barrier, even the ones that seemed written in the stars themselves.